What's going on, everyone? This is the My Aggie Nation Podcast. I'm Travis Brown with the Eagle alongside Robert Cessna, Eagles sports editor. Texas A&M coming off a win over New Mexico last week, heading into their big non-conference matchup at Miami this weekend. Cease, let's start out with what stood out to you about A&M in that New Mexico game, especially as you've had a couple of days to kind of digest what went down last Saturday in Kyle Field.
Just so much of it was clean because you can't control the quality of the opponent you play. They could have played Notre Dame. It turns out they played New Mexico. But that being said is when you look back how clean the game was, even though they had too many penalties, but they were stupid penalties. You didn't see a lot of motion penalties. And Jimbo touched on it, which I noticed while the game was going on, except for the touchdown run. Not a lot of missed tackles, but just a clean game. And I think that's a product of where we're headed, that these athletes are really working out year-round. They're getting together in the summer, and you expect them to hit the field running, and I think that was A&M. I can't remember a bad drop by a receiver. It's just a lot of – so to answer your question, very crisp, very clean.
Yeah, the thing that stood out to me, of course, is the passing game for A&M, and especially the deep passing game. That's going to be one of my big questions coming into this game against Miami was that an identity of this offense, or was that just because they were going New Mexico, they were putting a safety on Noah Thomas, and the deep ball was open? I'm going to be really curious to see how many of those shots they try to take downfield, because Miami has a good cornerback core.
Well, it might be, once again, is we don't know. The theory is Petrino will take what the defense was given, and they were given a deep ball. Mm-hmm. And so he took it, and you're right. But being the media that we are, is we always got tired of not seeing deep shots. Like they have this great arm quarterback, all these wide receivers. Why are not they taking deep shots? And I get it. But, I think Jimbo also got it. He was getting ripped because his offense wasn't any good the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. So they were good were they good because they were taking the deep ball, or were they good just they were taking what they gave them? We don't know. We'll know a little bit more about Miami because you upgrade the talent of the team you're playing, particularly the athletes. Are they going to take those 3 or 4 shots deep, or are they going to hit the intermediate routes, which will be open considering the defense that Miami plays? This is why I love these first 2 games. I'm real eager to see what A&M does on both sides.
And a road test at a stadium that at least some of the guys have some familiarity with, some of the older guys who were around on the 2020 team with that Orange Bowl win. What are you looking for in this bigger test from the Aggies to show you that they have made the steps forward from last year?
Well, they've struggled so much on the road the last couple of years. Really, it's been a trait of Jimbo that does pretty well at home, not on the road. And you can say, well, Cessna, a lot of that's the SEC. It's tough to win on the road. Yeah, I agree with you. It's tough to win on the road. But Miami is a SEC-type team in the fact that we know they're going to have talent. This has not gone into Bryant Denny, or this has not gone into LSU where they're going to be 100,000 throwing things at you. They probably maybe will get 55, 60,000 at the most, I'm guessing.
They're having a buy one, get one free tickets.
Yeah. And they're having an orange out and whatever. I'm thinking, I figured what to do, born orange to get A&M even matter. But my point being, this is not an intimidating place. It never has been. When you go to Miami, it's what you can get caught up in. Oh, man, it's like going to the swamp. Oh, this is Florida and all. And then suddenly you got your head in the swivel. You're at the site and you're not playing your game. I don't think that will be the case with A&M, since they also go up a day early. But getting back to I want to see them go in and take care of business on the road.
Mm-hmm. For me, I still am curious about the development of the offensive line. They were, from the eye test, they were pretty good last week. If you look at Pro Football Focus, they were actually graded pretty low on both pass and run blocking, especially pass blocking. So I'm curious to see if, with greater talent, if that starts to not necessarily pass the eye test, and if Connor Wigman has the time and ability. Now, some of that grade goes into the second stringers they had in with Max Johnson in there at the end of the game. So you have to, things weren't as smooth and steady when the second string guys were in later in the game against New Mexico. We're curious to see how much of the grade played into that as well. But yeah, it wasn't necessarily graded great. But on the flip side, Miami's pass rush was not graded very well. So kind of that dichotomy between A&M's offensive line and Miami's pass rush, which is going to step up and take the next step, might be a good matchup in this game.
Yeah, and of course you get back to the quarterbacks, and when you touched on something, I was laughing because I said to myself as the game unfolded, there was twice that Wegman just took off because no one was open and no one was really rushing him. And I'm laughing. I'm saying, you're not doing that next week because somebody in Miami is going to get free, whatever, and you're going to get tackled. It's going to be 2nd and 17 instead of you picked up a first down, and then suddenly that drive is done. But, you know, it's apples and oranges, but I'm just laughing. That's why I want to see against quality athletes. Is Wegman making that tight throw? Is he getting that decision? Can he get to the second read where I thought – if he had to, sometimes he looked at 2-3 reads because, like you said, there was no rush, so he had time. Can he do that with Miami? And like you said, Miami didn't have great numbers, but Miami played a pretty encouraging game for them, considering they were also 5-7. So we're seeing two very excited teams Saturday, and it makes for, you can see why ABC's calling this game. One team's going to be really good, feel really good when this game's over.
We kind of saw the extremes of both programs in that A&M, a lot of deep passes, just a lot of passes in general. And then Miami with Tyler Van Dyke, a good quarterback, they just ran the ball all over the place against Miami of Ohio, had a good running game. How much do you feel like these offenses might level out and find balance? Because you find it hard to believe that Miami is going to be a mostly run-based offense with a guy like Tyler Van Dyke and what he's been able to do the past couple of years. And you find it hard that A&M isn't going to run the ball or wondering how much success they're going to have running the ball as they've rotated through guys and you don't necessarily have that bell cow anymore.
Well, I'm interested to look because you do each week we do study the opponent. It's tough for us to study the opponent before you get here. You know, going back to last year, Cristobal, and then this year, you know, he cleaned house on his assistants. He brought in like 7 new assistants. He was an offensive tackle. He was weaned on offense. He changed his philosophy a little bit because he believes in spreading the ball but power run. So he hired his offensive coordinator from U of H that was under Hogerson. So what's funny is their writers, or maybe we can talk to the writer later, they're interested to see how that meshes because some, spreads of the spread offense, but yet keep the power spread. So it'll be interesting when we know A&M last year had trouble against the run. So will Miami spread the field a lot and try to run in the middle, expose A&M, maybe hit the tight end with some quick deals? But you're right. It'll be interesting to see just what will Miami be doing on offense because they got a new coordinator. A&M's got a new coordinator, and we know a little bit what Bobby Petrino can do. But like you said, he took a lot of shots deep last week. He took what they had. So I think, it's like anything. Oh, the best defense is going to win. Well, this is a game where maybe the best offense could win because last year, why'd we see a good game? Because neither team could score. Because the whole season, neither team could score. So we saw a nice, good, hard going low scoring game. I'm thinking this might be more might take the high 20s or low 30s to win.
Yeah. I know you with your weekly grades, you grade the coaching staff as a whole. You gave them an A, I believe, in the New Mexico. How would you grade Bobby Petrino and DJ Durkin individually from that game?
Well, give them a lot of kudos. At first, I was worried about Durkin when New Mexico started like 10 plays, 52 yards, 2 first downs, and I'm saying, what'd they do all season? But then only pick up like 1 more first down the rest of the way, shut down the run game. Other than that, getting back to what I love to see most was nobody running wide open from New Mexico, nobody in the wheel route getting open, other than the guy bouncing off for like the 27-yard touchdown. No one bounced off anybody. They had good tackles, so got to give Durkin really high grades because he was able to move guys in and out on the D-line without much change, which you should when you're playing New Mexico. Bobby Petrino, I just loved that how they seemingly moved the ball effortlessly. I said when the game was over, it felt like that should be a 500-yard game, but they only had 411. Well, that's all they needed. They just took what they gave, and they got 52 points. It's not about the 411 yards. It's the 52 points. So once again, yeah, I get it. They played New Mexico, but I was complaining last year when it was 31-0 against New Mexico. I was complaining a few years ago when they couldn't do anything about Vanderbilt. So both coordinators get high marks, but it was New Mexico.
I know in social media land, there was a lot of talk from Aggie fans about, tight ends been such an identity of this A&M offense for so many years. And the tight ends only had, I think, 2 targets.
Yeah.
One of them was Jake Johnson drop in the end zone. But I think that's kind of indicative of exactly what you were saying with Bobby Petrino. Jimbo Fisher said on his radio show last night that the tight ends are part of the offense. It's just that's not what the defense was giving them, and the other guys were open. I think so much in Jimbo Fisher's offense with somewhat the personnel they had at wide receiver, somewhat the quarterback, and the offensive line's inability to block some too, that those deeper routes, those wide, they weren't open. So often they were having to check down to the tight ends over the middle of the field or low, and it's kind of a weird case for an A&M fan who's been watching this team for so long that they didn't need to really check down a whole lot because their wide receivers were getting open and making plays deeper down the field.
I laugh at that because you can't have everything. And of course, everybody knows I stay up late. I get kind of psycho. So the other night I was looking, I said, well, with Thomas and the other wide receiver, they had great numbers. The other guy opposite A&M, holy cow, they're too good wide.
Evan Stewart.
I'm saying these two guys had monster numbers. How'd that rank up? Look up. So I looked up all the basically all the teams in the country, and really you could argue that those two receivers together had a better game than about everybody except 2 or 3 teams in the country. Now think about that. You think about, and I know it was only one game, it was only New Mexico, but that's all you have to go on. But A&M had a monster game by 2 wide receivers, and one of them wasn't Anaya Smith. And then you could say, well, Smith's going to be great. I get it. He is. They just didn't need him. They covered him. They evidently had 2 guys on him, and they weren't going to him. Tight end was, but when you have 2 guys, both get over 100 yards, whatever it was, and they score 5 touchdowns between them, whatever, you can't be too picky. I laughed about it. It's like everybody wants everything. I just want $1 million. I don't care about the second $1 million. And it's like, yeah, I just always have to laugh when, they didn't do this, they didn't do that. They won 52-10.
Being psycho is kind of a job qualification for being an Eagle. On Tuesday on my day off, I went back and watched the game and marked down all of the different formations that they lined up, or at least the personnel packages they lined up in. 11 personnel, which was a pretty big staple of Jimbo Fisher. That was 22 plays out of 68 plays. 10 personnel with 17 plays, but actually in 10 personnel, they never actually ran the ball. They threw it 14 times. There was both of the quarterback scrambles came out of 10 personnel, which was pretty interesting. And most of the shots that they took down the field came out, which makes sense. 4 wide receivers, one running back, 12 personnel, 16 was the next. And then there was a scattering between 20, 21, 31. That jumbo package too, where they ran 22 with the extra lineman in there, ran that on the goal line. That's how Le'Veon Moss scored his goal. But 10 personnel had 2 touchdowns, 11 personnel had 4 touchdowns. The jumbo had 1. I didn't have time, and it would be futile to go back and try to break this all down with Jimbo's offense, but it did seem like they were rotating guys in. They were giving different looks. There was different personnel packages all the time throughout the drives of Bobby Petrino's offense.
Yeah, and the good thing was they did it so smoothly you didn't notice. Like in the past, they get the wrong package and have to take a timeout or run it. And it was just last couple of years, there were just 2 or 3 times a game you just shook your head because it looked like nobody was on the same page. Whereas Saturday against New Mexico, it looked like they were on the same page really the whole game, and that's what you want. And particularly the first game, that's impressive.
The only time that they stuck with personnel was before that Le'Veon Moss drive. They stuck in 12 because they were running the ball a lot through the end zone. They were just running. And so they had that 2 tight end, 1 running back set through there, a lot of times with Wegman under center. And then they ran 10 through most of the 2-minute drill there at the end of the first half leading up to the blocked field goal makes sense too. You're going to have a 4 wide receiver set in there, but that was just interesting. Wegman, when he was in there, it was 13 plays in 10 personnel, 17 plays in 11, 10 plays in 12, 3 plays in 20. There was only one time that they were in empty set. So interesting to see how that might change and move around. So, Cease, gut feeling on this weekend. I know we've put our Prague panel picks in. Who do you have winning this one?
I picked A&M, but man, I think this is going to be a close game just until A&M goes on the road and shows me that they can play a clean game and get in the low 30 points. I'm going to believe when I see them, because you could go back to Missouri when they went on the road, and Missouri was horrible that year, a couple years ago. They just haven't done anything on the road, particularly with the offense. So until they go on there, I think in Miami's playing for a lot. They're trying to, Cristobal was also bad year for him. This is a quote statement. What's funny is I think with both these coaches are in the second year of like 10-year contracts. They're not going anywhere. They're making too much money. But, both of them kind of need to win.
Tyler Van Dyke, I know there was reports coming into that first game that he might have injured his thumb, and that might be why they were running the ball a little bit more in that game. Curious to see how much they're going to throw the ball against them. But I really think this is a game that matches up well for A&M because, at least to start out for, it looked like their run defense was really good. And Miami, at the minimum, is going to try to establish the run to set up that passing game. If they can really suffocate that run game, it's going to be hard for Miami in this game. And I think when you look at what I said between Miami's pass rush and A&M's run blocking, I think from what I saw, A&M's offensive line is improved. So I think A&M could win this thing by 10 points.
Well, I'm kind of, I was disappointed last year, and the fact is very seldom does A&M play the same non-conference opponent back-to-back years. All the hype for Van Dyke, I expected to see a much better showing, but he was missing open wide receivers. He did not have a good game here last year. And now when I look at the guy, and I was going to double check, I think he might be playing for his fourth offensive coordinator. I mean, that's hard to do when you're a quarterback, but he's got a lot to prove, and he knows he played poorly this game last year. And sometimes you're only as good as your quarterback, and he played not that well against A&M, and that was pretty much evident all year long. And like you said, if he's got an injury or something, and you're looking at A&M's defensive line that we know can bring pressure, they haven't done it yet in the last, like last year, they weren't able to do that. But I think that's going to be a good matchup to see what can he do, because right now you'd have to give the edge to Connor Wegman, and he's only going to be starting his 6th or 7th game, and Van Dyke is like a 10th year senior almost, whatever.
Well, let's hear a little bit more about that Miami side of things from Susan Dignan of the Miami Herald. She joined us last year to break it down. She's going to join us again here next to talk about that Miami Hurricane team.